Welcome to Cinema-Savants, your home for all your movie and TV news, with Todd Vandenberg, Lee Vowell, and Rob Steele. And coming up in this week's show, well, frankly, we've got a lot of movie news. We've also got the flu and allergies, so bear with the sniffling. It's gonna happen, although both of us would rather it didn't. Not much we can do now. I got my flu shot. I don't know what's wrong with Todd.
I was going to, and I waited. I got about a day too late.
Apparently, he says, thinking that thing really hurt anyway. I don't know why flu shots hurt. That doesn't...
They do hurt.
I don't get that. Anyway, if you'd like to support the show, because we need to buy medicines for everybody, go to the website, cinema-savant.com. There's a button that sends you to the store, because we have a store where you can get T-shirts, long sleeve T-shirts and sleeveless T-shirts and hoodies and pillows and phone cases and stuff. It's very cool. Everything you get there supports actually the entire Coil Entertainment Network. And we appreciate your support. We're the two old guys on the porch with the wine coolers. On to the movie news, though, which is why you tuned into the show. You didn't want to listen to us babble about flu. Apple TV claimed this week that they are going to be having a global launch in 2019, as opposed to people like Netflix who said we're releasing in the U.S. this week, and this country next week, and this country the week after. They don't need to do that. It's going to be available on any iDevice, so just, hey, there it is. I think that's a good idea, because the devices are already there and in use, so why not, right?
Right, and they already have the Apple TV device.
Yeah.
So... are they really just going to call it Apple TV? Are they really not going to?
That's the last I heard. They could probably, if they call it IT, well, they can't call it ITV. That's being used by the BBC. I think it's the BBC.
Yeah, they'd have to buy it from them, which they probably could do with pocket change. But it just seems kind of not smart, which is an unusual thing for Apple. Like not ever happening. It's like, why would you name your streaming service the same thing as your device, which has been out there? I mean, because when I first heard the thing, Apple TV coming, is like it has been for several. What are they talking about? Yeah, so it's just.
What do you mean?
It seems rather odd. Here. Yeah, I mean, I don't have an Apple TV, but I know people who've had them, like you said, for a few years now. It's like, what? Why is this news? It's like, it's a streaming service. You might want to differentiate that. I don't know. It just seems rather strange.
Well, they've still got a couple months to change the name, and they could.
And they could.
They could spin it off into a separate service. See, that's my segue. To Helios and Masterson, or Matheson, or whatever they're called. The ones who bought MoviePass and then started tanking themselves.
You mean crooks and frauds?
I don't get that. They're spinning MoviePass off into its own separate thing. Let's see, the best description I found for it was they're taking MoviePass and MoviePass Films and MoviePass Ventures and MoviePhone to create a, quote, vertically integrated entertainment company, whatever the hell that means, and Helios and Matheson will continue focusing on data analytics and consumer-centric technologies without having to worry about MoviePass dragging them down.
Yeah. Little late for that, boys.
Whoops. Built a time machine.
Yeah, like I said, they should just rename themselves Crooks and Frauds and just be done with it. I mean, wow. Twice now they've gone through rounds of renewing subscriptions for people who had canceled their what has become a really awful service.
We were high on you guys earlier this year.
Yeah, when you actually delivered on what you claimed you would do. And as we were discussing in pre-pro.
I got to say it twice.
I know. I knew that would make you happy. As we were discussing before the show started, I'll just use the generic term.
Oh, no, but then people will know what you're talking about.
Yeah. It's so sad that if they had just changed their... Obviously, that wasn't going to sustain itself, 30 movies a month for $10. And if they had done one of the things they did, like either change it to, okay, you can still see 30 movies, but we're not going to let you see the big blockbusters in the first couple weeks, because that will cut down on the usage of it, which, of course, they really don't want you to watch 30 movies in a month. Yeah. And that would make it more sustainable. Or cut it down to 3 movies a month. But you see whatever you want. $10 for 3 movies a month? as long as you can see whatever you want, that's reasonable. I would have stayed with that. But for them to charge you $10 for 3 movies and then tell you, oh, well, you can see these 2 showings of this film or these 2 showings of that film on these days, go to our website and find out exactly what you'll be able to see. And by the way, it might change by the time you get to the theater, so why are you bothering?
You can go see these 2 Adam Sandler movies twice. Which
legitimately happened many, many times. That's like the worst customer service since the days of the 70s and cable companies. Not that cable companies have great customer service these days, but I mean, they were just renowned for having the worst possible customer service anywhere. And they've trumped that. It's just unbelievably bad. So I can see why they want to divest themselves of the name, because there's no way they can divest themselves of the company. Who's going to? Well, you and I could buy it. I'm sure they would take $5 from us.
I've got a stack of quarters here on the desk.
That's too much. Maybe just cut that stack in half.
I've got a stack of dimes next to it.
I mean, that now has negative. That's why they're doing it, because MoviePass has such a huge negative connotation now, and it's a shame, because if they had had any management acumen at all, or any, I don't know, even basic humanity or common sense, they could have resolved this instead of just, I don't know, throwing darts up in the air and seeing whose head it landed in and changing their decision for that hour of how they're going to handle it. I mean, what a fiasco. I mean, they're going to be talking about MoviePass in business school for decades.
Yeah.
About this is how you don't do things. Just, God, how atrocious. And seriously, they belong in jail. They belong in, I don't mean disbanded and fined by the SEC. They should be in jail because twice they have stolen money from their customers. Twice. That's just unconscionable. Anyway.
I've got 2 paper clips, a stick pin, and a tub of Vicks. Do you think you can... Or should I throw in the key to the car that I don't have anymore?
No, send me the Vicks.
Okay.
And give them the key.
There we go. One company that seems to have found the key to getting things done correctly might not be, because Netflix, yeah, that's boy, I'm pushing these segues. Netflix has gotten into a bit of trouble this week. I mean, they had some good news, but we had a couple stories that I didn't quite understand the purpose of. One of them, Netflix has been accused of targeting their users by what is being called race or skin color, whatever. I don't know about you. When I signed up for Netflix, I never entered what color my skin is.
Nope.
I don't remember doing that, which makes me wonder how they're doing. How are they doing that if they don't?
My assumption is that they're based on if, say, a customer is watching a lot of films that star Asian cast members, and whether that's East Asia or Southern Asia, whatever. And then they'll say, oh, okay, well, you must like these, so we're going to show you more films with Asian cast members or black cast members or whatever.
I'm a white guy who likes the Medea movies. Stop giving me Chris Rock. I guess. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure either, because I don't know that that's exactly racist, because if you're watching, God help you, if you're watching a lot of Adam Sandler movies, they're going to show you a lot of other horrible, bad comedies, because that's what you like to watch. That's not racist. That's just profiled, and it's profiling in a good way.
That makes sense.
Because they're trying to give you more access to more films you may not know that they have, that you apparently enjoy because that's what you have been watching. So I don't know that it's really...
You need to be able to take things off the list of things you watched.
Oh, definitely.
Because, I mean, there have been times I go, I wonder what this is. Oh, it's crap. Never mind. And then all of a sudden you get referred to, oh, you liked that movie. No, I didn't. I turned it off.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you might want to build that into the algorithm. Did they actually watch the entire film?
Yeah.
Or did they watch 5 minutes? And actually, that would be a good way to help them queue, is like, look at the movies that you have watched for 5 minutes and make sure you don't show those movies in your,
right,
in your feed. But yeah, the whole thing about this being racially charged just seems a little much. I mean, God knows we have tons of race problems in this country.
Yeah.
And really all over the world at this point. And race and ethnicity and religion and all sorts of happy things going on with psychotic people doing bad things. But I don't think Netflix is part of the problem. I think it's just a matter of, well, okay, this is what you watched. We think you'll like this.
Speaking of Netflix, one of ABC News reported earlier this week, or I guess it was last week. We had a weekend in there somewhere. They reported that Netflix is about to borrow $2 billion with a B, as in, boy, that's a lot of money. $2 billion to pay bills.
You know who it's not coming from? It's not coming from Helios. Well, it could come from Helios and Matheson because they'll just sell another 10 billion shares of the company. Yeah, that seems rather weird, doesn't it? $2 billion loan.
Well, they're doing that at the same time these stories were next to each other when I found them. Netflix borrowing $2 billion, and Netflix TV series Sabrina is already filming season 2.
Yeah.
I've been hearing good. Have you seen any of it yet? I have not had the opportunity to get to it.
I've not seen any of it yet. Although when we talked about the clips, look very interesting.
Right. I've got some friends who said you need to watch this. It's very good. I'm like, oh, okay.
It does. It does sound. I like the fact that they're taking a different take on it, and then it does look like it would be good. The thing that strikes me is they're borrowing $2 billion, and their major competitor. I suppose it is their major competitor at this point, at least, is Amazon Prime Video.
Yeah.
And their owner is like, if they need an extra $2 billion, he'll just like pull open his petty cash drawer.
Not even petty cash drawer, just tilt the couch over.
Yeah, I mean, Netflix is definitely the biggest streaming company, and they really show no signs of slowing down. A lot of analysts, what was it, last week or 2 weeks ago, where they had their quarterly report, and a lot of analysts were downgrading it. And then the reports came out, and it's like, oh, guess what? We were wrong because they added so many freaking subscribers. It is interesting, though, when you're burning through that much cash, which is another reason why they're canceling some shows. I just saw the other day that they had.
We'll get to it. Or
no,
will we?
Marco Polo?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and the Marco Polo, apparently they cost like, I think, $120 million.
Ouch.
Which is why they canceled it. Not per show, obviously, but I mean, it was like a 10 or 13 episode run. And it's like, that's a heck of a lot of money for one short series, considering that Netflix has thousands of properties. So you can see why they might need a couple billion and why they're canceling shows like they are. But man, I still wish they weren't canceling some of them that they were. But anyway, yes, we'll get to that later.
Okay, we'll get to it's on the list.
Yeah.
Things that are being not canceled but delayed. There's been a lot of delayed things coming of late.
Yeah, there have.
Including Wonder Woman 1984, which has been delayed for 7 months from a November 1st, 2019 start date to summer 2020, because that does need to be a summer movie.
Yeah. That one makes sense because you're not going to move it up into the summer. So it makes sense to push it back. I'm not sure why they ever had the November start date anyways.
I don't either. But the November 1st start date was almost immediate. They announced it. And like 10 minutes later, 2 other companies, and I've forgotten who's making these, the Charlie's Angels reboot and the new Terminator movie have both taken the November 1st date.
I hear Bosley's going to be the new Terminator. That'd be great.
He's being played by Patrick. One of the Bosleys is being played by Patrick.
Yeah, exactly. One of the 15 Bosleys. One of the rumors, and I don't know if you've seen this, but one of the rumors for the shuffling of Wonder Woman 1984 is they're recasting her buddies, Superman and Batman.
Really? I have not heard that.
Which I just saw that this morning, which would be interesting. An interesting way to introduce new actors. I mean, I can see that if they're actually doing that.
Although, thing is, this takes place in 1984.
Right, which is the problem, because neither of those characters should be running around in 1984.
Superman, maybe, but
he'd be a baby. Because,
Super Kid.
Yeah, I mean,
they did a Superboy series.
I did do a Superboy series, but exactly, if this movie is set 34, well, by the time it comes out, 36 years ago?
Yeah.
So Superman probably would not even have been on Earth at all, let alone be Superman. And Batman probably would not be Batman at that point either, because I don't think they were implying that Batman was in his 50s. He was older, but I don't think they were implying that he was...
Bat-Knight.
Yeah. So,
which was a horrible character in and of itself.
Oh my gosh! So that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense.
It doesn't. Speaking of
which means that Warner's will absolutely do it.
Speaking of things that don't make sense, have you seen who's coming to the TV show Gotham? Oh, dear God.
Yes, I have.
They're introducing Bane, who did not need to be in Gotham.
Okay.
You know what he looks like? And I had to look these names up this morning. He looks like WCW superstars Glacier and Max Moon had a kid.
Oh, jeez.
It looks bad.
It does look really awful. I was just, when you said he doesn't need to be in Gotham, is like there's
a lot
tons of characters that don't need to be in Gotham.
Actually,
like
most of the citizens need to have moved out of Gotham.
Yeah, that show doesn't need to exist, which we've talked about before. What an awful idea, and obviously it's popular. It's in its 5th year, and thank God it's going away. But
yay. No more Fish Mooney. Oh,
and now Batman apparently is building his proto bat suit. And how old is Bruce now?
He'll be 6 next November. I don't know.
I mean, just stop with this crap. God, what a just...
Now
it's like Helios and Matheson put this piece of garbage together.
As opposed to the other DC shows, which are not doing too bad still. And there was news out of the Elseworlds crossover of the Arrowverse this December, where they're introducing Batwoman, without Batman, Batgirl, Robin, Nightwing, Alfred, etc. Batcow, for there is such a thing. The Elseworlds crossover this year, and I think this is kind of cool, is going to include the Flash from the 1990s TV series.
That is very cool.
Original actor and everything, John Wesley Shipp, who people now know as the guy who played Barry Allen's dad, or Jay Garrick played them both in the new series. He actually played Barry Allen in the 1990s Flash TV series, and he will again with the same... This was my one problem, I think, with the original series, live action series, was the bubble muscle costume.
Yeah.
Which just looked ridiculous, I think. I mean, they had the color scheme right, but if you, and this is Halloween, so you go to Walmart or whatever and get your kid a Batman costume, and it's got those artificially inflated muscles to them. That's what this costume always looked like to me, and that didn't work.
I think it looked quite that bad, but yeah, it wasn't great. But he was good in the role. He was good in the role, and it was a pretty good show. So I think that's very cool. I that's something that Warner DC is actually doing right.
Yeah,
very very cool that they're doing that.
What a concept!
Indeed. Which, by the way, I did not subscribe to it because I don't feel up to watching much of anything. But I actually was thinking about doing the free trial of the DC Universe thing because the original Flash show is on it.
Hey.
They have tons of stuff on that service. Actually, it seems pretty cool.
I will say this. I have been watching the Titans series. I've watched 2 of the 3 episodes that are out. Some of it is really good. Some of it needs help. But for the most part, it's really not that bad. So
that's a ringing endorsement.
Thank you.
It's really not that bad.
It's growing.
Yes.
So I think they're getting their footing, trying to figure out where they're going and stuff. I think it'll get there.
Yeah, that happens with tons of shows on streaming services. I mean, I think one critic or writer has termed it the Netflix effect, where everything just seems to start very slowly. And it's like, the first episode is basically exposition. We'll try to keep you interested. And then gradually you get better and better, which there's really no need for that. But that does seem to be how almost all of the series run.
I think I would go back and call it the anime effect. Because a lot of anime series, you get like the first 3 episodes are almost pure fluff to get you used to the universe that you're going to be in. And then it takes off.
Yeah, which is just true, but which is also silly. I mean, you can get things rolling right from the start, but
sometimes if it's a very complicated universe, you're going to be thankful for the exposition episodes. But anyway, no segue at all for this. We've talked about rock star biopics.
Yes,
because Bohemian Rhapsody starts Friday. Looking forward to that.
That's fast.
The Elton John movie, not as much. Now here's one I think fits the category of what we're looking for. I had his name here just a minute ago. Here we go. Jean-Marc Vallée. And I'm probably mispronouncing his last name, but it's his fault for not spelling it correctly. He's doing a biopic about John Lennon.
Isn't he the guy who fought Captain America in the... No, that's Batroc, sorry. Batroc.
Yeah. Jean-Paul.
Jean-Paul.
That was Jean-Paul Vallée. his twin brother from a third cousin.
Or it's Hunter Hearst Helmsley's alter ego.
Yeah.
That sounds. Actually, I'll probably actually talk about what you're really talking about now. That is awesome. Awesome news.
I like it. It's it being put out by Universal. Big name thing here. And I thought this was interesting how one of the producers happens to be a woman named Yoko Ono.
That's interesting.
If you need a good source for, hey, what did John and Yoko do? Getting one of them, the one
what
you can't get.
Yeah, that's. I mean, obviously, there's, like we said, there's reasons that neither of us are particularly thrilled about an Elton John movie coming up. Well, John Lennon's story is finished, obviously, and certainly a very compelling character, not just to the music, but a lot of the things he said, and the whole uproar over Yoko, and the uproar over his statement that the Beatles were bigger than Jesus, and how that was taken, and on and on and on, and at the core of it all, the music. So I mean, this could be an absolutely fantastic movie. This is excellent news for anybody who likes music or movies.
Yeah. See, as opposed to,
as long as it's good.
As long as it's good, yes. See, that's good news as opposed to the Star Wars news of the week, which is the Boba Fett movie is dead. Several people in the hierarchy at Disney have looked at the upcoming Mandalorian TV series, which is basically Boba Fett's people, and said, you know what, we don't need a Boba Fett movie. And a lot of the hierarchy have said it is 100% dead, which I don't like that. I wanted to see a Boba Fett movie.
Actually, I love it. I don't really. I mean, I would have gone to see a Boba Fett movie, but it's not like my life won't be complete without it. And it shows me that they're finally realizing you don't have to tell every freaking story that pops into your head.
That's true.
It's just they've turned it into, well, it always was a money-making machine, but it seems like all they're worried about is like, oh, what kind of crap can we throw out on the screen to have people watch? Because we know they'll come watch anything we put out there. And the latest movies have been considerably better than the trash that were the prequels, but they're still not the same quality as the first trilogy in my mind, and I think in most people's minds. Yeah, they're entertaining, but no one is going to look back at these and say, "Wow, these are groundbreaking," like they do with Star Wars, or "Wow, this really changed the tone in interesting ways," like they did with The Empire Strikes Back, and "Wow, this really launched a huge toy tie-in like they did with Jedi." So, yeah, I'm glad to see that they're having a little bit of discretion and realizing we don't have to make every single thing that pops into our head. It's like, God, we don't need a damn Jar Jar Binks movie because I'm sure that was coming next. Oh. So, it's could have been an interesting story, yeah, but don't we already know the story of Boba Fett? I mean,
pretty much.
So why are we making a movie about him?
I don't know.
It's like, because people would go see it and we'll make another $500 million if it's a bomb in our terms. Right. So, no, this is good news because it means that when they do come out with a movie, it'll possibly be a movie that actually needs to be made and a story that needs to be told instead of just, oh, here's our next cash grab.
Well, see, while we may not entirely agree, I agree with a vast majority of the points you just made on that. And I think you're going to agree with me on these next 4 stories that I'm putting into one segment called, Oh, Please No. Because none of these are going to be good news. Starting, and I'm going back to the Netflix thing for a moment. Mike Colter has indicated that he's done playing Luke Cage, which I think is a very, very bad thing. He was excellent in the role. He was perfect. Now, my problem with this story is he's indicated over Twitter. Now, I'm going to send a personal message to Mike Colter right now. All right? Mm-hmm. That's a wussy way of doing it, Mike. You don't indicate on Twitter you're doing something. You need to come out in public and state exactly what's going on. I dare you to come on this show. I'm going to get my ass kicked for this. I dare you to come on this show and tell us what the hell's going on.
He's in a car on his way to Augusta right now.
He probably is.
You're going to be sad.
But at the same time,
hey, listen, if
make for a hell of a show next week.
If Twitter is a good enough vehicle for the President of the United States to make policy statements, it's
not.
It's yeah, I agree.
That was easy.
It is awful news, though. Well, it's not awful news, but it's sad news and bad news.
They're going to get progressively worse as we go through this segment.
Yeah, but and I understand why he's coming out with that, because hell, they canceled the show, and there's rumors going around that it's just because they're going to do Heroes for Hire, et cetera, et cetera. And I can understand his. Could they replace him? Yes, he can be replaced, because anybody can be replaced. Should they? No, because he's awesome in the role. I really like Mike-Colter in that role. So hopefully they'll flash money and good plans, I think, is even more important to him.
Yeah.
And then he'll say, okay, that sounds like a good idea. So,
Oh, Please No Part 2. The guys who wrote Deadpool say they're probably going to be rewriting a reboot of the Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah. That's a no.
Way too soon.
Mm-hmm. And I don't care that it's the guys who wrote Deadpool, because great writing.
I don't care who it is at all.
Like you said, right, way too soon. Exactly.
You haven't even done Part 6 that you've been claiming to be doing, and you're already rebooting. They're going to come out at the same time.
Yeah, it's just...
That's how stupid this is.
Let's, speaking of cash grabs by Disney, let's push this back about 10 years.
At least.
And then you can talk about your reboot, but no, absolutely no.
No.
This is... Most of those movies are just interchangeable. Well, all of the sequels, in my mind, are interchangeable at this point. So... Yeah.
The first one was good. After that, not as much.
Yeah, first one's a lot of fun. And I've been told several times that the last one, which I guess is the Dead Men Tell No, but I don't even know what the hell the title is, and I don't really care, is
Dead
supposed to be really good.
Swallow Chest, something.
Yeah, exactly. But to reboot basically, this is an ongoing series, and you're going to reboot it already, which look how well that worked out for Sony and Spider-Man when they rebooted it with the Amazing Spider-Man. It didn't really work out that well, and then Marvel could have stepped in and exactly, and hold their hand. So no, this is
no.
And the news gets worse. I understand. That's awesome.
The news gets worse because they have announced that the Labyrinth sequel is ready to go. It's not going to have David Bowie in it. Then why are you even bothering to make it?
Or Jennifer Connelly.
Yeah.
Well, it could have Jennifer Connelly, but...
And yet, no. David Bowie is what made the Muppets are... I apart from the Happy Time Murders, I love what the Henson Company does.
Mm-hmm.
But the Muppets are kind of interchangeable for this movie. Jennifer Connelly, I could... whoever you want to put in that role is fine. What made that movie was David Bowie. And he's not with us anymore. So
someone can step in for the role and take it over. But I agree, David Bowie was a very.
I don't think we've got anybody who has the Bowie charismatic thing going on that could take that role.
Oh, it would have to be, obviously, it would have to be played differently.
Mike-Colter.
Mike-Colter would be awesome as one of the Muppets.
Now he is coming to the show. He's going to kick your ass this time. Fine. Yeah. Okay.
He'll stop in Augusta and he'll head down to West Palm.
Yeah.
The weather's nice down here, Mike. Come on down. It's like 70. I'm not as upset about the Labyrinth remake as you are, but I absolutely agree. That's a really tough thing to remake because the charm of the Muppets, because it's not that they're just puppets. I mean, there's a lot of performance that goes into it.
Yeah.
And I know, but I mean, you have to recreate that. You have to recreate Jennifer Connelly's performance because she is very good in that. She's a heck of an actress, and she was when she was a kid. And obviously, to top it all off, David Bowie, because of his presence and just his performance in that movie. So that's a really tough one to break up. At least they waited a decent amount of time.
It's not a reboot. It's a sequel.
Oh, jeez. Well, in that case, it should be Jennifer Connelly, shouldn't it?
Yeah, no reason not to. And the little kid in the Waldo costume has grown up now, and he's a Muppet. I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
The fourth story in the Oh, Please No segment, and this one kind of terrifies me. They're making another Star Trek series, except this one is going to be animated, adult-themed, and a comedy.
The Lower Decks? Are we talking about the Lower Decks?
The Lower Decks.
Okay.
No.
I when I first hadn't read much about it when I first saw this at the Lower Decks. I thought, okay, that's interesting, but I didn't get the part that it's a comedy.
Yeah. I mean, there's supposed to be like an episode of the guy who cleans the toilets on the Enterprise. What the hell for?
Ah, jeez. So Adam Sandler is involved in this. Not that he is, but that sounds exactly like something Adam Sandler would think would be funny.
My point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely no. I mean, is there room for a comedy series? Sure. Why not? But that just sounds, if that's one of their examples of what they think is going to be funny, wow.
That I read that somewhere, and I'm really hoping it's wrong.
How awful. Yeah, hopefully that was just an example of a writer's example of what they hoped it would not become, because that just sounds terrible. I'm not really on board with a Star Trek comedy anyway. I mean,
I want them to continue. I want them to continue Deep Space Nine. Bring Cisco back from visiting with the prophets.
Mike-Colter could be his son.
Cirroc Lofton. He's not dead. He's still around. He's still an actor. I occasionally see him in things. Let him.
Just saying, Mike-Colter's available now. Maybe he'll do voiceover work for the Star Trek animated comedy series. Wow. Yeah, that's.
But yeah, that just sounds horrible and horrific.
The Lower Decks, if it was just going to be like a straight show and focus on the little people, including red shirts and stuff like that, it's like that'd be interesting.
Yeah.
Just an everyday life kind of thing. I mean, but no, not like a comedy. I mean, that's just no.
But yeah, truly horrific idea. And speaking of horrific things, because you wanted to bring this up this week, so we're going to finish the show talking about horror movies for a minute, because horror seems to be making a pretty good comeback, and not just because it's Halloween. The Friday the 13th movies are supposed to be being rebooted by LeBron James, of all people. I don't know if that means he's playing Jason.
Maybe a really tall Jason.
Really tall Jason. Critters is being remade. Killer Clowns from Outer Space is supposed to be being remade. And Halloween topping the box office now. Just among a myriad of other horror movies. Looks like it's making a comeback. Is this like a cyclical thing?
Yeah, it probably is, but it definitely is making a comeback. I mean, just looking at the top 20 movies so far this year, you have to go down to 9 to get a horror movie, but it's A Quiet Place. $188 million. And The Meg, which kind of fits that category, it's 142. There's Halloween at 126, and we're only entering its third week. The Nun is down. I mean, so they're definitely
Get
making
Out this year or last year.
Get Out is last year,
but it was Oscar nominated.
Yeah, and
for a horror movie,
and made a ton of money. And Rotten Tomatoes has a list of the 150 best horror movies, and this is just based on their critics' responses. Part of the problem, like Get Out is listed as number 1, which I think is ridiculous. I really like it, but it's not the best horror movie ever. And I don't think they would even say that, but just that happens.
We're not knocking it.
That's their rating. But it's interesting because this list does show, and A Quiet Place is number 3, which I love A Quiet Place, and it's not number 3. But what's interesting is there is a mix of a lot of different eras in this. Number 2, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, 1920. Number 4 is Psycho, 1960. Number 5 is King Kong, as in the 1933 original. So, yeah, this is I don't agree with the placement, but it's not like they did nothing but new movies. But there sure are a lot of new movies on the list, and I don't particularly agree with where they are on the list, but rightly so. Like, go back to 2016. That's just 2 years ago, The Witch.
Yeah. Which
is a really big hit for a small horror film. Hereditary just came out this year, and again, A Quiet Place. It's definitely making a big comeback. It follows 2015. So just in the past few years, The Babadook, which is a scary as hell movie, that's from 2014.
Well, it's going to TV too. I mean, the new Sabrina series is supposed to be really scary. Was it Midnight Texas?
Mm-hmm.
I think horror series. Gotham is just horrific if you're a Batman fan.
Castle Rock on Hulu, Stranger Things on Netflix. Yeah, I mean, definitely making a huge comeback. Our House on Haunted Hill just launched on Netflix, which I've seen. Which
is supposed to be making a season 2, if I recall correctly.
And based on, I only caught the first episode, and it's very atmospheric and becomes very scary towards the end, and does a really good job of launching without being too much of that treading water syndrome that we were talking about earlier. Yeah, it's definitely making a comeback because, for one thing, they usually can be made relatively cheaply. And people,
how much does K-Rose syrup and food coloring number 5 cost?
And they definitely, as in they being people, they will flock to go see horror movies.
Yep.
Why? Lots of people have been debating that for decades. And if you ever want to get to really in-depth and do some reading, interest on, well, I can't even talk, must be the flu. If you want to get an in-depth look at why people like to be scared, pick up Dance Macabre by Stephen King. Gosh, I think he wrote it about 30 years ago, but it's a survey of horror in general.
Works.
And it's a great book. Great book. Might be one of the best things King has written. Seriously. It's just a really good survey of horror and why we like horror. And as I recall, basically his premise is that it helps us deal with the real world horrors because we can just kind of get the scares and the shocks out of our system by just watching something that we know is not going to happen. So a production budget for Halloween, the new, for example,
right.
and just came out. So movies aren't cheap to make these days, and has Jamie Lee Curtis. Not that she's an A-list actor, but she's a pretty big name. $10 million.
Wow. I've got that in the couch.
I'm going to come over with Mike Colter, and we're emptying that couch.
You're going to rip up my couch to get to, yeah. Okay.
So there's a big reason right there why people like to make horror movies, because they typically don't cost a lot of money to make. I mean, $10 million, that's ridiculous, the return on that. Get Out, we were talking about, made $176 million domestic. Worldwide, $250 million. That's like, oh boy, that's a lot of money, like you said before. Cost $4.5 million to make. So
take it.
That's one of the big reasons that, if you've got a production of $4.5 million and your movie tanks at the box office and only makes 20, you made a lot of money.
So, that sounds like you're making a sequel.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a big part of the reason too, is just the economics of it. Is typically they don't cost a lot of money to make. And A Quiet Place, oh wow, they really blew the budget on that one. That cost $17 million. They could have made a Halloween and A Quiet Place Halloween and Get Out for what it cost to make A Quiet Place. But worldwide gross, $338 million, a third of $1 billion for a $17 million investment.
They can afford a sequel.
Yeah, which John Krasinski is writing, which I was just reading the other day about a show that's coming on Netflix, a movie that's coming direct to Netflix called Bird Box, and unfortunately it won't be out until the end of November, which is a flip the script of A Quiet Place. It's not that you can't speak, it's that you can't see deliberately, because there are monsters that if you see them will drive you insane. So these people have to go around blindfolded so they don't see the creepy monsters, which sounds kind of crazy.
I'm reminded of the ravenous bug bladder beast of Trawl from The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
But
it's such a mind-bogglingly stupid beast that it believes that if you can't see it, it can't see you, so it'll leave you alone. We've lost Todd.
Oh my God! No, I just immediately thought that either Jim Carrey could play the creature if they did that, because that would make perfect sense. Yeah, I don't know. But Bird Box actually sounds like it could be quite good, and it's actually based on a novel that came out a few years before A Quiet Place, so it's not like, oh, let's change this idea around. No, this actually came out before. So, that sounds
like a good place to end the show.
And stars Sandra Bullock and John Malkovich.
Hey.
So, has a decent cast.
Decent cast, and we've got a decent cast, and we're going to be back on Friday with the review show. Woo. See you then. Until then, go see a movie.
Captain, we're losing power in the warp engines.
I think we should be leaving now.
I'm going to go home and sleep with my wife.
And on that unusually harmonious bombshell, it is time to end.
I am very disappointed!
Man, we have a weird job.
It's shameful, but, it's a living.
And like that, he's gone.
Darn, that's the end.